Welcome to G.I.Joe Chronicles, Outpost Edition.
I trust your mission was equally well executed.
I want a stone cold righteous attention.
Militarily speaking, it's only fair to say that Cobra Commander is a world-class buffoon.
Welcome to G.I.Joe Chronicles, Outpost Episode 2. I am Jim Meal, also known as Jim the Joe Junkie. Over the course of this podcast, we intend to discuss as many aspects of our favorite pop culture subject without getting too bogged down in the details. Just two people having a conversation and reminiscing. Today we will be discussing issues 1 through 7 of the Marvel Comics book from 1982. And of course, I'm not alone. Joining me today to discuss these classic comics is DJ Christados, Pat Sampson. Welcome to the Outpost, Pat. After last episode, I asked Jared to give you the map with the Outpost's location on it. I'm guessing he did because you arrived on time. Did you have any issues reading the map to get here?
No, I actually didn't, and I'm glad Jared did give me the map because I got this potato peeler that I need, kind of fixed or a new one. So he's like, well, why don't you just go to see Jim in the Outpost? Maybe he can get you a potato peeler. I'm like, okay. So I'm glad I got a map, so now I know where to go. So do you got a potato peeler around here at all?
I do have an extra one that you can use. I've got a 50-pound bag that I got to get ready for dinner. So.
Oh, is that why he sent me out here?
I think so.
I'm going to have a talk with him. He knows that I don't like peeling the potatoes.
You don't mind eating them, though, do you?
No, I don't mind eating them
at
all.
Okay.
Definitely not at all. So since I'm out here, you got some pretty cool stuff around here, I see.
Well, thanks. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but the collection is growing. Did you see the thing over my left and right shoulder?
I do see those flags, yeah. Oh, that thing. Oh, yeah, look at that thing. That's SS flag. Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
Look at who's fancy now. The Joe Junkie is all fancy now. Wow.
The junk pile is growing, as some people in my family would say.
Yeah. So was it a thing that you started with little things? And so you would collect I got extras of this. I can save that, or I can sell that off, keep the best one, sell the rest off for parts or whatever to somebody, use that money for parts to just kind of build up until you finally got a flag.
That's how my collection has grown. Yes. I slowly buy collections, put them together, keep what I want, get rid of what I don't want. And as the time has gone on, I've expanded into other properties and video games and just things that I can sell. And then I got the flag, and now I've got to figure out what I want to save up for next.
What's in store for G.I. Joe? Find out in Marvel Comics.
So, Pat, I got a question. We're talking about the comics today for G.I. Joe. I know that the G.I. Joe comic was one of your favorites, but I'm curious as to where it is in the timeline of your comic collecting. Was it the first comic you collected, or was it one that found its way into your collection after you already began collecting?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I want to say it is the first comic that I started to collect, but it wasn't the first one that I was buying. Early in my childhood, in the 70s and that, I would get different comics and pick them up here and there. And all different kinds of them, whether they were superhero ones. I remember having some Western ones, all kinds of comics at that time. But once G.I. Joe came out, the toy, and then, seeing the comic book out on the shelves. In fact, the first issue I bought was, I have the Treasury edition of issue number 1. And I think then the second one, I can't remember which one came first, but issue number 8 is with the sea strike, was one that I had, and that, man, does that cover, I think it almost falling off of the staples, because I've read that one so much, because I think that was the one that I first had. But going back and picking up all the older issues of Joe as a kid, just making sure that I would run to, our nearest convenience store. It was the PDQ. We would go there and get it off the shelf there before I could ride my bike about another couple miles to where the big mall was. Then I would get my comics, the G.I. Joe ones, at least every month. I had to make sure I was out there getting my paperboy money that I would get from delivering papers and riding it all the way out to the mall past the cornfields, get to the mall, get to the Walden Books, and check that rack to see what's the next issue of G.I. Joe is out there. And started collecting a few other comics at that time, but G.I. Joe has always been my mainstay. The Marvel run that has definitely been the mainstay for me. Later on, it would be the first and only comic book, let's put it that way, that I would do the mail-in subscription for. So I had like a 2-year subscription, came in that brown paper bag, wrapped around it, and it would come, drop it off in the mail, and I would wait for that to come in every month for that. Just a love for this comic book. With that, then I would ride my bike even longer to where I found a comic book store that was even further into town. And I would get on their pull list and getting the Joe there. And man, so many good memories that I remember at one time, the comics that I did have, I started to do a little purging of those, but I never got rid of the Joes. And I think some of it too was then to get a few of the missing issues that I had. And the majority of the missing issues that I did have tended to be the earlier ones, anywhere from 18 and below I would have. So what helps me the most is the little mini books, as I'm showing here, the little digests. So I would get those to fill in the blanks, but I still wanted the full size ones as well. It's been on my pull list up to issue 155.
You mentioned the Treasury Edition. That's the real big size, the big one,
That's
right?
the big one, yeah.
Yeah. I had one of those and I sold it. I got a good price for it.
Yeah, if you're getting a good price for it, it's the Treasury Edition. So I treasured it, and it was G.I. Joe. And I only have a few of those. The other Treasury Edition that I kept from childhood is the Battlestar Galactica one that I had as well, too. So
I got one more question for you. Do you still have your original issue number 8?
I do.
Do you?
I do.
Okay.
I didn't bring it out at this time. It's it is bagged and boarded and locked up. Yeah. Like I said, I've never got rid of a G.I. Joe issue. I still have my original, 21 and the original 155 and everything since then. I have those. So yeah, never got rid of them. I remember, oh man, I could tell you some stories that'll probably get me in trouble as a kid, because I found fellow Joe fans, and so we would kind of swap our issues. Oh, you got this issue, I got this issue, and so you got that issue, and photocopy here and there may have happened at the time.
May have happened. I never did that, but we did swap comics back and forth.
Yeah, and it was, oh man, I got so many stories.
Oh yeah,
around this that I'll save a few for as we get into these.
Yep, we'll get in as we go. Have these comic book episodes. All those will come out. But for me, I started my comic book collecting really started with G.I. Joe. And it was later than the issue that you had. As I mentioned in episode 0, we went on a trip to Florida, and my mom bought 3 G.I. Joe comic book issues. 2 of them were special missions, I think 21 and 22.
Okay.
And the other one was G.I. Joe Real American Hero number 88.
Oh.
It was the Python Patrol one.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. And we stopped at a flea market on the way back from Florida, and I picked up a couple G.I. Joe comic issues. From that point on, I went back and I had to buy all those back issues. Oh. And it wasn't like I started with one and then came up through. It was like, oh, here's one. I can, cheap enough. Because at that time, like you mentioned, from 21 down, they were still pretty expensive. Those were ones I just kind of waited as they came into, okay, it's a rough shape one, but hey, it's a copy. I can read it. The way I consumed or got the storyline for issues 1 through, I think, 15 was the Tales of G.I. Joe. I think.
I do have some of those as well too. Yep.
So those were easier to get.
Okay.
So I bought those to get the storyline.
I did the same. I would grab the Tales when I could to fill it in, and then knowing, like you said, just be patient enough. I'll find. I'm not one that needed to be pristine at all, because for me, my love for Joe is the storyline and the art. But I don't need it to have. Oh, I got this pristine cover, and I got to have it in certain. No, I want to love the thing. I don't want to, have some distance between me and it.
Yeah, and I still have issue 88.
Cool.
The original one that I got. I have sold some Joe comics back in high school. I sold them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, crap. And I regretted it. Now I've got them all back. I have all of them from issue 1 through 155, and I have what they call the G.I. Joe special.
Yep.
The one with Snake Eyes on the cover.
The one with the McFarlane cover on it.
That's the only one I have graded.
Oh, I bought it, but I never get. So maybe I should get mine graded.
I still have my original issue of 155. From there, that is where my love of comics grew. Like you, rode my bike down to the comic book store, looking for the Joe issue, and I got, boy, that Darkhawk looks interesting.
Yeah.
Or that New Warriors looks interesting. So that's and then it just kind of went from there to X-Men to Avengers to
down the rabbit hole.
Yep. 30 some years later, here we are.
That's awesome.
So
when you went to, after you bought that issue of 88, and then you said you stopped at a thrift store or somewhere like that, were they older issues that you found?
Yep, they were some older ones, and I'm talking they were older as in like 60s
or something.
Yeah, yep. So those were old for those are 2 years old at the time. And one of them was the issue number 1 for G.I. Joe Transformers. I remember that. That was one that I picked up there.
That's a good haul right there. Then.
Yeah. So
very cool.
Thanks for discussing that, kind of knowing where our origin started from. And like you said, there's going to be plenty of stories as we go on of how we obtained some and how we got rid of some. And as I stated earlier, we're covering issues 1 through 7 of the Marvel Comics from 1982. At the end of episode 1, I stated that we would be covering issues 1 through 6, but we didn't want to split up the 2-part story with the October Guard. And as we move forward, we will attempt to stay in the calendar year that the comics were released in, but we will adjust the issues that we will be covering if we need to so that the multiple issue stories are covered in the same episode. And we may not be reviewing the entirety of every issue. We will be discussing highlights of the issues we are covering, favorite moments, favorite covers, new characters paid the ultimate sacrifice, and whatever else we feel like discussing. To make sure that we're giving each issue some attention, we will go through, state the title, brief description, and some of the creative team for that issue. We will be getting our information from yojo.com and 3djoes.com. Some of these descriptions are going to be a little bit shorter, but if you already listen to this podcast, you have a real good idea what's going on in the stories anyway. So let's begin with some short descriptions.
She's been kidnapped by Cobra. We have no alternative. Call in G.I. Joe.
Issue 1 had 2 stories in it. First one was Operation Ladies Doomsday. And a description, the Joes must rescue a peace activist from Cobra who has hidden her on a remote island. And the second story, Hot Potato, the Joes have to get an information tape out of hostile territory.
All right, I'll take issue number 2, and it was titled Panic at the North Pole. Creative team again was Larry Hama as the writer. Penciler is Don Perlin. And a short description of what happens in this issue. The Joes try to recover an alpha wave fear generator from a Russian campsite. Nothing could be wrong with that. And I'm sure it'll never come up at all later in the series.
Issue 3, The Trojan Gambit. The writer was Larry Hama, and the penciler was Herb Trimpe. And the description, a seemingly deactivated Cobra robot wreaks havoc in the Joes Underground HQ.
For issue number 4, it was titled Operation Wingfield. Writer again was Larry Hama. Plot and art go to Herb Trimpe on this one. And the story synopsis goes as follows. First Strike, a paramilitary group funded by Cobra, has a base in Montana that Hawk and Grunt, with support from Snake Eyes, infiltrate. First Strike is led by Vance Wingfield, and their mission is to start World War III. They have 2 nuclear bombs. One is put on a B-29 bomber and flown towards Russia, and the other will be detonated here in America. Hawk is able to shoot down the B-29, thereby collapsing First Strike's primary plan. The secondary plan is detonated the second bomb right underneath the compound. Vance Wingfield's wife shoots him in the back just after starting the countdown. The rest of the Joe team invades the compound to support Grunt and Snake Eyes. Zap and Grunt then disarm the nuclear warhead and save the day.
Issue 5, Tanks for the Memories. Written by Larry Hama and penciled by Don Perlin. The synopsis: General Flagg is showing off the Mobat at a parade in New York City to General Austin. Breaker, Clutch, and Steeler are in the parade as the Springfield Marching Band, or Cobra, attacks them. They are chased around Central Park and are able to capture the Cobras. They then bring them to the viewing stand where General Flagg and General Austin are staged to watch the parade. The viewing stand is actually a temporary Cobra command center that Cobra Commander and the Baroness have been leading the attack on the Mobat from, directly underneath the generals.
We move on over to issue number 6, titled To Fail is to Conquer, To Succeed is to Die. Writer again is Larry Hama. Plot and penciler is Herb Trimpe. Story synopsis goes as follows. Breaker, Clutch, Steeler, Flash, Scarlet, and Stalker are sent into Afghanistan to retrieve a top-secret Russian spy craft that crashed there. They are given a new special vehicle, the RTV, Rough Terrain Vehicle, to extract this plane. After meeting the local rebels, a CIA agent, and collecting the remaining parts of the plane, they begin their journey across Afghanistan. They encountered the Russian equivalent of the G.I. Joe team, the October Guard. As the two teams fight it out over the plane, Cobra steps in to capture both teams and the plane.
Issue number 7, The Walls of Death. Written by Larry Hama, and plot and penciler was Herb Trimpe. The synopsis goes like this. Cobra has captured both the Joe and October Guard teams, as well as the spy plane parts they are fighting over. Both teams escape and form a pact to recapture the plane parts from Cobra. They invade a Cobra bunker and survive several traps. Both teams meet at the RTV that is holding the parts inside the bunker, and the Joe team is able to escape from Cobra and the October Guard with the RTV. Once they reach the extraction point, they learn that they have been decoys and the spy plane parts were taken out another way. With all the issue details out of the way, we're going to move on to our first segment called General Issues.
Call in G.I. Joe.
Fight for freedom wherever there's trouble. G.I. Joe is there.
The first 7 issues of the comics contain many single-issue stories where Larry Hama and Herb Trimpe were trying to introduce all the characters. But there were still some beloved stories that people remember. One of these issues includes a plot that plays out almost 50 to 60 issues later, and as with any comic book just starting out, especially a toy-related comic book, each issue highlighted different characters and vehicles in different environments and situations. Larry did such a good job at storytelling that sometimes we would forget that this comic was produced to sell toys. But there were issues that you could tell where Hasbro asked Larry to have him work these vehicles and figures into an issue. And those issues usually were highlighted multiple new characters and vehicles, and then he would continue on with his story after that issue. Yeah, you can tell. He's like, I'm going to get this out of the way and so I can keep my story going. I said all of that so that we can discuss these great comics. So, Pat, let's start by discussing some of the stories, plot lines, and some defining moments from the first 7 issues. What stories do you remember and excite you from these first 7 issues?
Well, out of these 7, there isn't really that bad of a bunch one, but, how could you not remember what happens in the first issue? Operation Doomsday with Burkhart. That's a classic one in itself. Hot Potato. It's just a fun romp. The big one here that stands out to me is the second issue with Quinn. That whole comic from front to back was just something special there.
Yeah. And as I was stating, that issue 2 was one that he probably didn't intend it to, but it played out to tie into the Terrordromes 50, 60 issues later. And it introduced a great character, Quinn, like you said.
Yeah.
Who he may have just been a one-off, but he introduced him, 12 issues later?
10, 12 issues later.
Somewhere around there.
I get them all mixed up. Yeah, definitely Quinn comes back in another cool way that you're like, oh, yeah, I remember this guy.
Again, I was collecting these as back issues. Where I was at with the issue 60s, there was a footnote that it was like 68 or 67 when they actually showed why the Terrordromes were being made. I said, look back to issue 2 of where this device originated from. I'm like, are you serious? That's the hardest at that time. That was the hardest comic number to find because it was so rare. I mean, that was the most expensive one at the time.
Yep, it was. Yeah, it is just the groundwork that Larry was doing in, I would say, the first 20, there's a lot of groundwork done. And then once issue 21 happens, it's just like, boom, explosion. And then even more stuff starts to happen that it's like, wow. I remember, I can remember getting issues after 21. And 21 was just blew my mind even as a kid that I would just pour over, laying on the shag rug that you had and, in the living room and just, drinking whatever, Kool-Aid, with lots of sugar and just pouring over that comic book. And, just, I can't wait to talk about that one. Just the joy that it brings me back. But just, again, going back to the groundwork that is kind of done here. And, you look at issue 3 with the Gambit, it's a beginning of the Pit getting, taken over more than once, or at least infiltrated more than once. You can see where that kind of starts to play here because, it actually happened, and it happens a few other times. And then you have issue 4. Could have been a one-off, could have been a throwaway from there. But man, after doing The Devil's Due and America's Elite, I was blown away when to find out that Wingfield's back in America's Elite and he's a bad guy. I was like, holy cow, that's a callback from beyond.
The Wingfield family showed up in Devil's Due in their Frontline series as well. Okay. It was his son and his wife.
Oh.
Then in America's Elite, I think 4 or 5 issues, Wingfield is the villain. But that shows, as you said, rooted all the way back there. And the writers of those Devil's Due stories realized the importance of calling back and how that affected them back, when they were kids like we were.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And to know that interesting thought that they were like, hey, we can take this guy from way back then and turn him into something, even bring him back and make him, because if they can bring Sir Panther back alive, or they can bring Storm Shadow or anybody back, it's like, okay, you can do what you want to do. And it's a comic and it makes it fun. But just to call it back, to know that they had that probably a personal connection to it as a writer, as a kid back then, reading these things just like we do right now. Issue 5, it's all right. But then you have the first 2-parter of 6 and 7 with the October Garden. Those guys are around for quite a long time and
off and on for quite a long time.
Yeah. Some fond memories of the stories and that go on here. How about you, Jim?
Pretty much what you were saying, and I interjected when I could with the way that I was collecting. They were, to me, almost history books because I was reading current, and I was going back to find out why or what happened. But every time I found an old one, I'm like, oh, all right, great.
This belongs in a museum.
Yeah, right. And like some of you were talking about, the Tanks for the Memories, issue 5, you could tell that was a toy. That was like, hey, it's time to sell the Mobat. But like you mentioned, don't know if Larry was intending to, but he did something similar with the toys, like we were talking last episode, where he had the file cards on the back.
Yes.
He created those dossiers for his own notes. And then they ended up on the back of the figures. Well, issue 1, not only do you have the 2 stories, but you have the diagram of the pit.
Oh yeah.
So he was thinking of this in advance for storytelling purposes. And I remember getting Tales of G.I. Joe, but I had that in the back. I'm going, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell that he probably put that together when he did the Trojan Gambit. He used that as a way to tell the story in a better way.
Just who doesn't love a good, cut up of a building or just anything like that? It's like, oh man, I would pour over that night and day on that as well too. And I want to give a shout out to Kevin Reitzel from the G.I. Joe Headcast, one of the co-hosts on there with Aaron. Kevin provided us a poster size of the pit. He was able to provide that to us. Man, to have that like that is really cool. So thank you again, Kevin, for that.
Yeah. So do you have it mounted on the wall somewhere? Or is that?
I don't right now. It's just rolled out, but I wish I had more of a man cave basement kind of thing, but I don't.
Yeah.
Someday I will. Someday.
Yeah.
In rereading issue 5, I did notice that General Flag, he's shot in this one.
He was shot in the head.
A little grazed.
Grazed,
yeah.
yeah.
Grazed him, yeah. So I thought, I was like, oh, yeah, I didn't remember that. I'm like, oh. So he kind of gets, So Larry wasn't, too shy from hurting some characters at all. And, throughout the issues. And I think that's what made it somewhat got you into the reality of the G.I. Joe universe, but not overly cartoony at all. It gave you some characters and some moments to where you're like, oh no, what's going to happen here? What's happening? Yeah. You start to worry about certain people, especially when issue 6, where you have 2 teams and then Cobra, all of a sudden, next thing you know, you get Cobra comes in and it's like, oh no, these 2 teams who are equally matched. Now, what are they going to do when they're getting taken over by a third party?
And as far as you mentioned, Larry not being shy of hurting people, any character that was killed in the early part were not Hasbro characters.
Oh, okay.
If you notice, like, Quinn, Dr. Venom, in the 100s, he killed some of the toy characters, but he didn't shy away from it. No,
but what makes that so interesting is that those are the characters that are people like, where's the Quinn? I want a Quinn. I wanted a Quinn for so long. So I still want a Quinn, but if I can find one.
They made some during the comic packs in the mid 2000s, and then there was a figure subscription one too, I think.
Was it the Super 7 or somebody makes a cheaper one? So I might have to grab that one just to have it. So those characters that weren't Hasbro owned become more of the beloved characters that people want to get or to have.
And like you said, it took a while for some of them to get their own figures. So now that we've discussed some overall storylines, let's dive into the next segment where we discuss new Joe and Cobra members, as well as supporting role characters in a segment we call Supporting the Troops.
He never gives up. He'll stay till the fight's won. G.I. Joe, leader of the Joe team, Hawk. Is America's best. He's in control. He's the man. Good luck, Joe. He lives his days. The legend of G.I. Joe. The legend of...
These first 7 issues were full of new characters. Basically, the entire 1982 toy line was introduced in issue 1. Each character had a small spotlight in the following issues. And as the series goes on, we will be able to discuss most of the characters at that time. But why don't we spotlight 2 characters from the 1982 line? Pat, I'll let you go first. Who would you like to discuss from the 1982 line?
I'm just going to do it, Jim. I'm going to steal your thunder. You know who I'm going to talk about.
That's why I let the co-host go first.
I'm going to go with Snake Eyes. With issue 2, there's a couple characters that stand out there, and he's one of them, definitely. And he walks away with that chain of weasel skulls. When we covered this on the OG Longbox episode back then, that was where Jason got his name of weasel skulls. Because
I wondered if that was where that came from.
Yeah, if you go back, I can't remember what episode it was, but we covered issue number 1. We covered issue number 2. I think we covered issue number 3, 4. We went for a while on a few of those. So if you guys want to listen to those, go back into the Longbox Crusade feed way back, and you'll find it there. The original origin of the Weasel Skull comes out when we cover issue 2. But still, just that of Snake Eyes wearing that and just becoming this, this bad guy who can take care of stuff. As the issues go on, you start to see more of him. But I think he's the standout character. You still have Scarlet, Stalker too. Oh, I don't want. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I'm stealing some of your guys. So Jim, you go.
I was going to say Stalker. Jared and I discussed it a little bit on the toy episode 1. Between the leaders of G.I. Joe, Stalker stands out as the best in the comics, as the best leader besides Hawk. It's kind of second in command, field leader, I guess you would say. He just, the way Larry Hama wrote him and how he was just so confident and he had everybody's respect. you could see that from, again, with, like you said, issue 2, the way he carries himself in that mission in issue 2 and just overtaking all the odds. And then the October Guard issues too, with 6 and 7. He just took charge, and he gets one of my highlights.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's a good choice as well, too. And I'll add another one for Scarlet. She's prominent in the majority of these 7 issues. She's part of the team that's kind of constantly in there, and which is amazing, which is a good thing, for women that could be reading this comic as well, just to show that equal in the fight here. So I really like how Larry develops Scarlet. It makes you feel for her and for the team and all the different characters in here.
Not only was she equal, but there were times where the team looked to her for guidance.
Yeah.
And like you said, the way Larry wrote her, she was confident. My second is probably going to be Hawk.
Oh.
In this run, you realize, he's the leader. The reason I bring him up in this is because in the October Guard issue number 7, at the end, they show that he sent them out as decoys, knowing. So you see a little bit different side of him.
Yeah.
That he's a leader that's willing to do what you got to do to get the mission done. And you just, every now and then you see that in the Marvel run. Not a lot, but the troops still respect him. When I read that for the first time, I'm like, that was weird. He's pretty devious.
Speaking about devious, I want to talk about Cobra Commander.
Okay.
In these issues, he, especially the 6 and 7, you can definitely see his, psychotic-y kind of just, he could be somebody.
Oh, yeah.
And even in issue 1 with the takeover, and oh man, you get that of him in the hood, and what a great one. What a great drawing and art that's done there. But the buildup of the organization of Cobra, that he is the leader, and brought it to where it is today, that it's a formidable foe. America needed to make a special team just to combat these guys.
Yeah. And later on, you find out how that started as a used car salesman, and how he built that up over time. The difference between this Cobra Commander and the one in the cartoons, again, Jared and I discussed this, and it's total night and day. Both are great for the media that they're used, but this one is definitely more devious.
Even in the Devil's Due, this guy is dangerous, and just, I think Devil's Due melds the two together, just wacky craziness that happens. I look at the cartoon as, what if Cobra Commander just like flipped out and went cray cray? Yeah. And that's the cartoon side of him. Yeah. So we see that he's just bonkers, and that's why things don't work out for him. In the comic book, sometimes things work out for him a little bit. It's not like they're totally wiping him out and all his plans just fall apart like in the cartoons. No, they fall apart, but there's still some consequences.
Larry Hama created some non-toy characters as well, so that he could tell more in-depth stories. Some of these characters would be part of the comics, toys, and cartoons for several years to come, and others would be in the comic for a short time, but would have a profound effect on the Joes, as well as being fan favorites to this day. So let's discuss some of these supporting characters we found in these issues. This time I'll go first, and I'll begin by discussing the Baroness, who is a supporting character. She is what I think is the only character that began in the comic, made an appearance in the first cartoon miniseries, then Hasbro made a toy of her in 1984. And she quickly became a fan favorite and continues to be a foundational character in any version of the G.I. Joe through the years. So the Baroness is one of those examples where Larry Hama created her, and I've been watching some of the cartoon episodes, and I realized that she's in the same uniform in the first miniseries as she is in the comic books. I didn't really realize that. I'm like, okay, it didn't dawn on me the timing, because she doesn't get her black uniform until the second miniseries, which comes out in 84 when her toy came out. So that was one of those.
That's right. She's in the blue.
Yeah, the blue and the yellow.
The blue and the
Yep.
Interesting. Yeah, it is amazing to see how the Baroness has progressed through the G.I. Joe series. She was there in issue 1 holding Dr. Burkhart, captive. And then from there, just to see her progression. Again, talking about Larry not holding back, she's gotten hurt. Later on we see that she needs some certain things to happen, to help her along to recover. Yeah. So another supporting character, we'll move into General Flag. And I kind of mentioned him earlier on about getting hit or grazed with a bullet. He is definitely a supporting character that still, kind of hangs around for a while throughout the series. And it's kind of good to see him here, that the progression of people achieving different levels of leadership in this one. He then leaves, giving Hawk later on the opportunity to, kind of fill in General Flag's role and go from there.
Another military leader is Major General Austin. And he may have only been in the one issue. Wasn't he issue 5? Or was he in issue 1 for a little bit? I don't remember. But
I'm not sure. Yeah.
He's in later issues in the 40s too. He's actually gives Hawk a promotion, doesn't he? In the 40s?
Possible. It's been so long that I don't know. And I don't know, is he a juggler?
No, he's not. He's one of the good general, or one of the good military leaders. So General Austin, Pat, I think you're looking forward to the next one.
I am, Jim, and we kind of got off a little bit on it before. Quinn the Eskimo. Man, this guy just, I don't know what Larry was thinking when he created him, but I would like to know what his thoughts were when he did it. This character to today still stands out as a standout character in this one. I think just the way he his mentality on life and his just, I do what I do, and if you're not part of my mission, or you're not getting in my way, I can help you out as well too. So, and we see him come back 10 issues later and make a significant impact in the Joe universe that Quinn does. And man, first we get to see him all, in his parka and a snowsuit, what he looks cool in. And then he comes back in a ball and jungle uniform.
Showing them legs, right?
Yeah. Just, oh man.
Now, did you know that there was a song called The Mighty Quinn?
Yes.
By artist Manfred Mann. It was released in 1968. Yep. All right, next up, we talked a little bit about him and his family, Vance Wingfield. We've already discussed it. We're not going to go into a lot of details, but it does warrant mentioning again how these stories affected people that were going to be writing comics in 20 years from when these came out. What could have been just a one-off story actually affects the Joe storylines decades later. But Vance Wingfield, it was one of those that you thought he died, but somebody carried it on.
Another supporting character, or I'm going to say characters, is the October Guard. We have Colonel Brekoff, Horror Show, Diana, Stormovic, and Shraj. Yeah, I'm not sure on that particular one, but he's one of the October Guard guys. But I definitely are the ones that really did stand out was, Colonel Brekoff, Horror Show, Diana, and Stormovic. But yeah, man, another group of characters that Larry creates here that stand the test of time on these as well too. That he continues to kind of go to the well on again for them, and the stories just keep enhancing the history or the legend of these guys.
This was another group that was added to the cartoon later. Now, not these exact characters. They did some tweaking of the characters, but the idea of the October Guard was in the cartoon later also. And they had some different characters, and Diana looked different. The idea was there. The last supporting character we're going to talk about is Dr. Adele Burkhart, or Lady Doomsday. Now, she comes back, she's introduced in issue 1, but then she comes back a couple times later in the Marvel comic run where the Joes have to rescue her again, issues 38 and 39. But then she helps after the Cobra Civil War, after all the Joes are arrested, I guess. She helps rescue some of them in that hospital.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So because that was the first time I was introduced to her. I'm like, who is this lady? Because again, with the way I was collecting, I was like, who is this lady? And then as I learned and got some of the older issues, I'm like, oh, it's just a pretty in-depth character where Larry was able to explore the idea that you don't have to always agree with people and still be able to get along and fight alongside them. Because she did not agree with what the Joes were doing, and the Joes didn't agree with what she was doing, but they all had their reasons. They all had their jobs to do, and they were able to complete it. And that was another thing Larry would do, is how he would write and just weave those life stories in without you even knowing it.
Yeah, definitely would do that.
So those were the ones that we had on our list. If there are any other supporting characters that we may have forgotten, add them in the comments below. And now that we've highlighted the supporting characters, it's time to discuss which of the supporting characters had the biggest or longest impact on the comic book or Joe history. I think it's going to be an easy decision this time. Pat, who from these characters do you think had the biggest impact on the Joe franchise in history?
Well, in talking just the supporting cast alone, we got to go with our man Quinn here, the Eskimo. Unless
I was thinking the Baroness.
Oh, well, yeah, that too.
Because she was a mainstay in every iteration.
Yeah, I guess I'm so happy to talk about Quinn.
Yeah, right.
That I forget about the Baroness. That she's been there for quite a long time and had the longevity.
But you're right. For some reason, people just love that character, and he's one character that people wish could come back, but he's not. As a franchise, I would say the Baroness, because she just keeps coming back.
Yeah, I get it.
But I can see your point with Quinn too. He's
an impact. He is. As a longer, it's the Baroness, but as a major impact. And don't get me wrong, the Baroness, things happened to her and just made some impacts as part of the series as well.
All right. Now we're going to roll into the final comic book segment we are calling Taking Cover.
What's in store for G.I. Joe? Find out in Marvel Comics.
In this segment, we will be discussing the covers of the comics, these bright and action-packed images that caught our attention and made us want to pick the issue up and see what happens in the story. I'm a big supporter of the cover representing what happens in the comic. Overall, the Marvel run of G.I. Joe comics did a good job of this. So, Pat, in your opinion, which of the issues 1 through 7 did the best job of representing the storyline and action that happened in the comic?
Oh, boy. Representing the action that actually was in the comics. Now, that's a good...
I guess, what's your thought on that? Do you prefer comic covers that represent what is happening in the story?
I do. That makes you a little more intriguing to find out what's... let me open this up. And, I like that little teaser of possibly what's going on. Are there some of these... You look at number 7, they're fighting. You look at issue number 1 with just the tank. That's an iconic cover for G.I. Joe number 1. The tank and then the troops just kind of blazing their guns and all that. Does it happen in this one? Yeah, there's a fight. They're all storming the island. Yeah.
Issue 1 is the obligatory cover where you have to include everybody on the team.
Yeah, we got to get everybody. Who's ever on the team is on this. It's the class picture right now. And you got to get everybody together for that one.
Yep.
Boy, I think you were right when you said that they really did do some good teasers of what's happening in the story. So if I had to really choose, I think, I guess, I'd have to go with issue number 3 with the robot. I think that tells the majority of what's happening in the story right there, right on the front cover. What do you think?
I was thinking, again, it's hard to pick because they all do a good job of telling the story before you pick it up and read it. But I got to go back to issue 2 with the 4 Joes walking through the snow.
Oh, yeah. It's another great one too, again, as well.
It's hard to pick which one
out of these 7. It's hard.
It really is.
And I can tell you, issue number 4, not so much. I mean, it's a cool, iconic cover just because it's just, some heroes running towards you.
But with that issue, you don't know who some of those characters are.
True.
Who's the guy in the beret? Whoa.
I don't know.
It's not Stalker. He's the only one with a beret from the first year, so that's...
Is it Hawk?
Yeah, I don't know.
Would you know that going into it? Or?
Which one is your favorite cover of the first 7?
Well, with that, I would go with issue number 2 as my favorite cover, just because it's got that cool look to it. It's iconic. Boy, there's still some other one. I got a lot of runner-ups on this one as well. What would be yours? And then let's do a runner-up.
Mine would be issue 7 with Colonel Brekhoff and Stalker.
Brekhoff and Stalker.
Yep. My runner-up would be 6 with the Cobra Commander reflection.
My runner-up was going to be issue number 7 with Stalker and Brekhoff.
Yep.
So
again, it's like trying to pick who's your favorite child. I mean, you like them all, but all for different reasons.
Definitely.
We're now going to move into our final segment that we call military surplus.
Now I know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
Here at the Outpost, on each episode, besides discussing the toys, comics, or cartoons of the highlighted year, we discuss a peripheral item related to G.I. Joe. This episode, we're going to discuss some of the G.I. Joe puzzles, mostly because after many years of searching in the wild, I recently completed the puzzle mural set from 1985, and all of the memories came rushing back. These were items that I could very easily have purchased on eBay, but like most of my collection, I prefer finding these items in person, searching, waiting, and hunting. This puzzle set was completed by a buddy of mine. He brought them to a toy show, and he told me, hey, I got some stuff you might be interested in. So I walked over there, and I left his booth with all 4 of them. I said, all right, thank you. And we did a trade, and we were good to go. For this segment, we're using information from 3D Joe's. We'll begin with the 4 puzzles from 1982. So, Pat, taking a look at the 1982 ones, do you remember any of these?
No, I do not.
I don't
remember seeing these at all, but they're cool. I mean, they're kind of like the comic book covers, like at least 2 of them. Mm-hmm. The first one and then the second one kind of remind me of the comic book covers. And then you have the jetpack one is really cool. And the tank one, tank one's like, that's fine. But I really like the first one. The first 3 I really like.
It's neat seeing some of these because you don't see these images anywhere else.
No.
Later on. So as I was looking at some of these, I thought these are pretty neat.
Yeah, definitely.
Like you said, I kind of like the tank one.
To each your own. That's fine. It's cool looking, but I'm really caught by 1, 2, and the first 3 ones. Is just the jetpack one is really cool, and the first one it reminds me of the issue number 1.
I looked at these. I had never seen them back in the day, and I haven't seen any of these at any stores or antique malls or anything anywhere. So the 1985 mural set, as I was stated in my intro here, I remember I had 2 of these that I bought back when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure they're still in my mom and dad's house, but I can't say for sure. I think I know if I could get to them. I think I know
where you think they are.
I think so. I had 2 of them, and then my buddy Robert Cook had all 4 of them, and I was able to finish it.
That's cool.
But I like to search and find things in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
You can very easily go to eBay, but it's part of the hunt. It's part of the hobby. What do you think of the overall?
The overall picture is really cool looking, and I don't know if I've seen these in 1985. If I remember seeing these in the stores back then, it probably did, but it probably didn't dawn on me like, oh, it's a puzzle and it'd be really cool to have, which is a shame because later on, as I'm a little bit older, I like to get like puzzles of movie posters and put them together. In the man cave that I want to have down the road, I do have Star Wars ones that are like that I put together, and I put them up in my son's room of the Star Wars posters, some Indiana Jones ones, things like that. And it's just like, I think that's kind of fun to do it like that. It's a puzzle that you put together and then you can display it like that. A fun thing to do, but I don't remember these, but it does look cool that you're a lucky man to have all 4 of these.
And sometimes it pays to have connections, but you look at it and it's got almost all the vehicles from 84 and 85.
Oh yeah.
And it's got one of my favorite toys is the tactical battle platform.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, but you got some dragonflies, you got the whale, hydrofoil, some rattlers and sky strikers. I think there's a shark in the background.
There's a shark there, a couple sharks in different ones, and yeah.
Mauler there on the land with the armadillo.
Yeah,
I mean, there's all kinds of
shipwrecks on the battle platform.
Yep. Who's
barbecue,
Firefly and Crimson Guard sneaking up. Yeah, the way the puzzles went together, you actually take the border off of the center sections and you put them together. You actually connect them together. All 4 of them. That's 4 separate puzzles you connect together.
So you take off 2 of the borders. Wow.
Yeah.
That's very genius on that. Are the parts that way, or you take the squared off piece off, right?
You take the border off of each one.
Yeah.
Yep. And then connect them together.
Connect them. Oh.
But they each have their own full border.
Yeah.
So it's a standalone puzzle.
It's a standalone square, but you take that outliner off and then it would, that's.
Yeah. And there's another mural puzzle we'll talk about later on too, from 1988. Now, 1987, there were looked like there was 4 60-piece puzzles, which I'm guessing for the younger collector. But I wouldn't mind having some of these now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of these images look like, you remember the G.I. Joe magazine?
I do remember some of those, and I think the one you're going to talk about is Crocmaster and Chuckles on it.
Yes. I'm pretty sure that one did, and it's that art style that was on those. All of them look like that same art style from those magazine covers.
Painted by Dave Norman. Wow. These are really nice.
They're gorgeous. I mean, some of the characters were crazy. You know, you got the Crocmaster and Crystal Ball and Raptor, but the art makes them just pop and makes them look crazy good. If I found those in the wild right now, I'd buy them just because they'd be
fun to have.
Yeah,
definitely. These would be ones that I'd be putting together and making a poster out of it and sealing it, doing anything.
Again, they have the characters from 86 and 87. Got the Tomahawk on one with Tunnel Rat and Chuckles and Leatherneck and Roadblock. And then one of my favorite characters on the other one, Lieutenant Falcon.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Falcon's coming out of there and taking care of Rocky Balboa.
Big Boa. Supposed to be Boa. Rocky Balboa.
Yeah. Big Boa and the Raptor. And
I think I knew these existed, but until I looked at them again, I'm like, I got to have those. That's going to be something I'm probably going to be looking for, keep an eye out for. The last set we're going to talk about is 1988 puzzles. This mural puzzle, I've got 2 of them, I think. So I'm still looking for those.
Which one do you have?
I have the one with, I want to say Voltar. So the one at the top right. And I think I have the one with Road Pig and Repeater. So the bottom left.
Bottom left. All right.
Yep. Again, they have the art's good. They got all the characters, a selling point. A few less characters and more vehicles on this one in there.
Yeah.
They got the Road Pig, a Repeater, Crocmaster, Spearhead. The top 2 have Falcon and Voltar as almost a portrait style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with very with the vehicles around them as well too. Man, these are really cool. I don't know what I was thinking. Why did I miss these?
See, by 88, I was still collecting Joes, but
I was all about the chicks.
I was still buying Joes up until I want to say 89.
I'm buying stuff too.
Yeah.
Interests were changing a little bit. So.
Yes, they were. Yeah, by 89 and 90, I was waning, and as you said, the chicks and the cars and the other stuff. So, anything you want to add?
I want to go find some of these, and I bet you they're a ton of money.
Actually, they're not bad. Like the 85 one, when I see them, they're $10, $12 at shows, so they're not too bad a price.
Too bad. Well, that ain't too bad.
No.
Yeah, maybe. I guess now I have to be on the lookout a little bit more when I'm at shows. I think the mural, out of these, the mural ones are really cool.
I have not put the 4 together yet because I haven't had a lot of time with things going on, but this winter, I think I'll be sitting down and putting them together and taking that all in. Kids like to help me with them too sometimes.
Yeah, well, that'd be a fun time. Good winter activity to do with the family. Sit around drinking some Yo-Jo Cola, putting a puzzle together.
There you go.
Some, maybe in between eating some chocolate donuts, then clean up your hands before you touch the puzzle. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got to have the grape soda too.
The grape soda as well too.
With there you go. Covered donuts,
You can make a whole big family event out of this.
Any closing thoughts on what we've discussed today, Pat?
I just really appreciate being here, and closing thoughts would be comic books were really where it was at for me at this time. Lots of great memories. I shared some, but I still got some that I've kept to talk about. Maybe next round, if I'm here around the next time. I really enjoyed talking about these comics and having fun talking to them about with you. So I didn't know there was puzzles. Now I gotta go find these freaking puzzles.
That's the danger of doing these podcasts, because I know a pretty good amount of stuff that's out there, but every now and then I see something, I'm like, ooh, or something reminds me, and I'm like, oh, I gotta go find that, and I gotta sell something so I can buy something.
I think that's what I gotta start doing.
Yeah,
is start buying stuff so I can start making that seed money. But this 7 issues that we covered, laying some foundation, was definitely done. There's still more foundation to be built, but you can definitely get a lot of history out of these and what's to come moving forward.
Worked out pretty good that we stopped at issue 7, because I believe 8 and 9 were written by somebody else other than Larry, and we can discuss that foundation where I think he took a little bit, it seems like he took a little bit of a break. And then from issue 10 on, he was just full bore writing there was only one issue in the 118 or 19 that he didn't write from issue 10 on. So, I mean, that's a workhorse. And
yeah, definitely. And then along with special missions,
yearbooks, all that stuff. Yeah. So
definitely a lot more to come on these, and looking forward to being able to discuss it and listen to it.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Pat, and listeners. Thank you for joining Pat and myself for this episode of G.I. Joe Outpost. Pat, if our listeners wanted to contact you, where can they find you on the internet?
Well, Jim, I'm glad you asked. You can find me on the Twitter, or X nowadays that the kids are calling it, at Christatos01. I'm also on the LONGBOX CRUSADE Network. You can find it anywhere on your podcatching devices that are out there, or also at longboxcrusade.com, or the YouTube page as well too. Go and check that out and subscribe as well there. Jim, where can you be found?
I can be found on Facebook as Jim Miel, JIMMIEL, on Twitter as Jim the Joe Junkie. I want to thank everyone at the LONGBOX CRUSADE Network for adding G.I. Joe Outpost to their extensive line of shows. Take a listen to all the other shows that are on the LONGBOX CRUSADE on any podcatcher. And if you like what you hear, go to Patreon and become a Crusader Club member, where you get all the access. Join us next time, where we will begin discussing the G.I. Joe cartoon, and my co-host will be someone that was there at the beginning of my Joe origin. Dismissed.
The music themes for this show are done by musical genius Joe November. Please check out his SoundCloud at Josephline99. That's Josephline99. You will not regret it.